Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 112. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Friday, Steelers Nation Day, potentially the calm before the storm, or maybe just calm before the calm as we wait on quarterback news, a quieter past couple of days for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But you and I, we'll find some things to get ourselves into trouble with, I'm sure.
Happy Friday. Aaron Rodgers still hasn't decided what he's going to do yet. Thanks for listening. You can follow me. It feels like that's about the show today. We got a few more things to talk about other than that, but it has been one full week now since Aaron Rodgers came to Pittsburgh and supposedly had a 6-hour meeting with the Steelers and still waiting to find out what he's going to do. A lot of people have been tweeting at me saying count on that April 9th or whatever shindig that Pat McAfee I think is having in Pittsburgh, and a lot of people seem to think that will be kept in the dark per se until that will that a lot of people seem to think that will be the great reveal date where Aaron Rodgers comes on and announces that he's signing with the Steelers. So I suppose that could be, a possibility, and we'll just have to wait and see until until we find out one way or the other. I mean, we obviously know at this point that Russell Wilson won't be back, and Justin Fields obviously won't be back, and the options are really, really limited if it winds up not being Aaron Rodgers for whatever reason, and team still has a gaping hole as far as cap and cash goes that they could obviously get Aaron Rodgers signed to a 1-year deal, and we just sit and wait.
We do. We're in the same position we have been for quite some time, but let's talk about other quarterback-related news and rumors and speculation not related to Aaron Rodgers. The big story locally yesterday for Pittsburgh was a comment from Colin Cowherd, and he's not exactly a big friend of the Steelers and been very critical of the team over the last couple of years, but he made waves with a comment that he made about the team's potential interest in Alabama quarterback Jaylen Milroe. He says, quote, "I talked to an NFL exec last night, very well connected, and this is a keep your head on a swivel, Aaron Rodgers. I'm told the Steelers really like Jaylen Milroe, 21st pick, first round. So if Aaron signs with Pittsburgh, it's going to become Kirk Cousins. They're taking a quarterback. If the 21st pick, Milroe's not taken, Pittsburgh is leaning now and taking him." So I'm going to put the Rodgers editorial that Cowherd made aside here and just focus on what Cowherd was apparently told. The Steelers are high on Jaylen Milroe. Now, is that true? We have no idea. It's lying season, smoke screens, rumors. This is par for the course, but I believe that Cowherd talked to somebody in the know in the NFL, and their belief is Pittsburgh likes Jaylen Milroe.
I don't doubt that maybe they like Jaylen Milroe. I wonder if they like Jaylen Milroe enough for first round 21st overall. That's you got two different things in play there. I look, every year you've got some quarterbacks that maybe get pushed into the first round that don't need to probably be there. I mean, you roll back to obviously several years ago with the Kenny Pickett class, and it wasn't regarded as a very good class overall. And then the closer you got, to the draft and all, people putting all these wondering, if all these quarterbacks are going to go and how many are going to go before the Steelers picked. And then obviously the draft rolls around and Kenny Pickett's the first quarterback off the board. in the bottom half of the first round there. So are we headed that way after these top two in Cam Ward and Shadur Sanders, potentially this year? And we've rolled through kind of the teams that could potentially draft quarterbacks at some point maybe within the first, well, I don't know, round or two here. I don't doubt that they may be like Jaylen Milroe. My big question would be is, man, do they really like him at 2021 overall? And I think as I sit here right now, I would be surprised if they went quarterback. I'll be surprised if they go quarterback in the first round, period, to be honest with you. I suppose if a guy like Shadur Sanders was to drop, maybe that would be enticing enough for them to pull the trigger on the position there. But I'm just not convinced that they're going quarterback in the first round. And from where I sit right now, I'd be very surprised if it was Milroe at 21.
I'm not convinced they're going quarterback in the first round either, but I'd be very surprised if Milroe was the guy at 21. I do think, and I've talked about, it's hard to really get a good feel for projections on where any of these quarterbacks not named Cam Ward and to an extent Shadur Sanders will go. Is Jackson Dart truly a first round guy? Who will be the third and fourth and fifth quarterbacks off the board, and where will that be? It's really hard for me to say right now, but I just have a hard time believing Milroe is going to be a first round pick in anyone's eyes, just given the overall inconsistency in his game processing and especially the inaccuracy he shows in the short and intermediate game seems really, really tough to sustain early in an NFL career. I know that, guys like Anthony Richardson have teams have looked past that and drafted based on traits and tools and arm talent and size and athleticism. Milroe has some of those similar traits, but to me, Milroe's not quite as freaky as Richardson was, and he has those accuracy issues. And Richardson, of course, has had a tough start to his NFL career. So I just hope this report is not true. Is it true? I can't say, but I really hope that the information Coward is passing along is incorrect.
Yeah, I just, like I said, I can maybe see if a guy like Shadur Sanders drops down that far for whatever reason, but and I know a lot of these major media guys like Bucky Brooks are mocking Jackson Dart, and I think even Jeremiah mock him. I mean, you're starting to see Dart show up in some of these mock drafts to the Steelers at 21st overall. The Ole Miss Pro Day is today, though, right? Today's the 28th, so we'll see. We'll start probably learning some point in the next couple hours who all from the Steelers are, is at that Pro Day. Let's see. Correct me if I'm wrong. The Pro Days were some of the first where the Steelers were, the major quarterbacks have been throwing at that the Steelers have shown up at would be Miami. Where else? Alabama, I guess, if you consider Milroe a first round pick. Where else have the Steelers? I don't believe Tomlin and Conrad the Louisville Pro Day.
And they weren't at Miami. Tomlin and Khan weren't at Miami. They sent guys there, but not
Right.
not Tomlin and Khan.
Right.
They've been at Alabama. We'll see about Ole Miss today. Texas for Quinn Ewers. You don't call Riley Leonard a top quarterback, but they were at the Notre Dame Pro Day yesterday, including Arthur Smith, and there aren't a lot of obvious offensive other talent that Notre Dame has this year. A couple of guys, but no top dogs. So that is a little notable as well.
And not at Syracuse, at least nobody really of note at Syracuse.
Ohio State for Will Howard.
They were there, but once again, how much can we read into that? Because Mike Tomlin tries his best, to not miss Ohio State Pro Day, but obviously there were some notable people there to watch Will Howard. I tend to subscribe to kind of maybe, the theory that we've talked about for a few weeks now. If the Steelers were to draft a quarterback this year, probably in the third or fourth round, and it could potentially be a guy like Milroe if he's still there, Tyler Shuck, Will Howard along those lines. I imagine we're going to continue to hear some of these things about, Milroe and Dart, and, how the Steelers love these guys or whatnot. But it's going to take a lot more convincing for me to get in a position where I think that they take a first round quarterback.
It is fair to say they're doing a lot of homework on all these quarterbacks, the top end guys and the mid round guys. Reportedly, according to The Athletic, Jackson Dart will come in for a pre Jack visit. We don't know when that'll be, and we'll see what the representation at Ole Miss's Pro Day looks like today. They got a bunch of guys Pittsburgh could have interest in, including somebody like Walter Nolan along the defensive line. But if Dart's coming in for a visit, Tyler Shuck is coming in for a visit. They went to Ohio State for Will Howard, for Alabama's Jaylen Milroe, and even to a lesser extent Riley Leonard at Notre Dame. That is a lot of work on quarterback prospects. Now, those schools don't offer just quarterbacks, as you said. Ohio State and Texas and Alabama offer prospects across the board, and Pittsburgh goes to those big schools to cast a wide net of prospects to watch. But is this? And the question is this about serious interest now, or is it due diligence, doing homework, and keeping the knife sharp? So if you make that big swing in the quarterback class of 2026, you've already kind of gotten a good feel for scouting quarterbacks and how to evaluate them to really have the best chance at being right in 2026.
Yeah. Yeah, I am interested to see. I mean, is this the last kind of big pro day calendar date today?
I think there is the Colorado Showcase for
That's right.
Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. Not an official pro day, but it's their personal workout that I'm sure will be well attended. That's going to be in early April, but this is kind of the last day of the big individual school pro days. You got Penn State, you got Ole Miss. Those are the big ones.
Right. So if there's going to be one final spotting of Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan, it would probably be today, and it would probably be at Ole Miss, right?
That would be my expectation, yes.
All right. All right. Well,
But
I mean, go ahead.
if you just look at like they've shown more interest in the top end quarterbacks than the top end defensive linemen. And that does that tell us something or not?
I just think due diligence here. And look, even, I know Tony Pauline he even come out and said they were at Texas and all like that. When have you seen Mike Tomlin be at a pro day and not be visible and have tons of pictures snapped of him? Now, could they have got in and maybe got in late or early and had dinners with some guys, and then because of some other maybe pro day, and got out of town and maybe even not even walked into the building for the actual pro day itself? I suppose that's plausible, but once again, how many pro days do you remember, Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan showing up at that he's not front and center at? Boy, he was. I mean, the Notre Dame one yesterday, very easily spotted. Every one so far this offseason, once again, that Mike Tomlin's been at. It's easy for members of the media not even covering the Steelers to pick out, hey, that's Mike Tomlin. Whereas maybe some other head coaches are not so recognizable, but Mike Tomlin obviously is. So I've gone through the full 2 hours or whatever of the Texas Pro Day, and I never saw him in it. There were no pictures that hit the internet of Mike Tomlin at the Texas Pro Day. Once again, not saying he wasn't there, but I still kind of wonder if he really was there.
I don't think he was at the workout because we definitely would have seen him with all the footage and the couple hour pro day they showed on SEC Network. But reportedly, somebody had dinner with Quinn Ewers and a bunch of other Texas prospects, and I don't think that would have just been area scout Chris Watts, the only Steeler personnel member we saw personally at the Texas pro day. So it may have been a weird case because the Ohio State pro day was the next day where they had dinner and they didn't even stay for the workout and just jetted up to Columbus for the next day. It's hard to say.
Yeah, and here's to them not drafting Quinn Ewers.
Right, but another name to mention in this mix of quarterbacks, haven't talked about him quite as often compared to Dart and Milroe and even Will Howard, but Ewers, another guy vying to be that third, fourth fifth quarterback off the board, and it's really hard to predict exactly the order in which these quarterbacks will go once you get past really the top two of Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders.
All right. And look, obviously, if you take a quarterback in the first round, that means unless you trade back into the first round, you're not going to grab a defensive lineman early. And right now, this team doesn't have a second round draft pick. So, I mean, you could get yourself in a position where, you draft a quarterback in the first round, and once again, if you don't get back in the second round, then that means if you are to address the defensive line room, then the earliest you would be able to do so is the third round, and that just doesn't feel like it's going to be the plan.
I hear you. We'll keep watching. We'll keep evaluating and see if they're down there at Old Miss for Dart and also, like I mentioned, Walter Nolan. I want to put my tinfoil hat back on, Dave. Keep it here in the drawer next to me for the
Boy,
podcast.
you've been wearing that a bunch last couple of days or a couple of shows.
And when it comes to safety, I mentioned it before. I'm going to mention it again. The top 4 consensus safeties in this year's draft are Malachi Starks from Georgia, Nick Eman-Wari from South Carolina, Andrew Makuba from Texas, and Xavier Watts from Notre Dame. And you have strong Steelers connections on the pro day trail to all 4 of those guys at Georgia. Tomlin and Khan being there, Terrell Austin personally putting Starks through DB drills, Eman-Wari, DB's coach Jared Alexander putting him through drills. Makuba, if Tomlin and Khan were at that pro day, they had a dinner with him, and then with Xavier Watts, Tomlin, and Terrell Austin at that pro day. So I don't know how to get clearer interest in a position than that. Does that guarantee they're taking safety in the first round? No. I know you've spoken about due diligence if the board breaks a certain way, but just from in a vacuum, in a pro day trail viewpoint perspective, they've shown a lot more interest in the top safeties than they have the top defensive linemen in this year's draft.
I mean, I think and we went through the safety room the other day and talking about, where is there a potential hole in this thing? And, you've got Deshaun Elliott's contract currently up after this year. You got a big year coming up for Minkah Fitzpatrick to see if you're going to, it's hard to imagine this team cutting Minkah Fitzpatrick after the 2025 season, but once again, you can't pay a guy what you're paying him and have multiple seasons like he's had, the last, definitely like the one he had last season there. But you look at the safety depth chart beyond Minkah Fitzpatrick and Elliott right now, and even though you went out and signed Juan Thornhill, there's just not a lot in there right now. So it would make sense at some point for this team in the middle rounds, even third, fourth round, to address that room. And safety at times tends to be a position that gets pushed down a little bit, in drafts. Now I think Eman-Wari is a guy that's going to be too hard for people to pass on in the first round. But could you see some of these other guys on that top safety list fall into the second and potentially even the third round? I think that's plausible. I think you got to do due diligence on this position group as well too, because 4 years from now, safeties could be in play as far as free agents go, and you want to you want to be able to circle back and say that quite a bit about these guys as well too. So I think that's a plausible aspect of getting to know the top 4 or 5 safeties in this class as well too. And then obviously running it back if the board breaks a certain way, maybe you're in a position where that is the best player on the board, one of those top 2 safeties at 21st overall, and maybe that's the way you have to go because a couple of defensive linemen are off the board that you like, a couple of quarterbacks off the board that you like, and that might end up being best player on the board scenario that could fit maybe not an immediate need, but a need that you could get on the field. I need enough where if you have the right player, you could definitely carve out 400, 500 snaps for him during his rookie season.
But what if it's not the fallback plan? What if it is plan A instead of plan B? Or right or wrong? I mean, what position have they shown more clear pro day trail interest in than safety right now.
I mean, I
can't find
suppose running back, we brought in guys for visits and all that go along with
Sure.
the pro day visits. But I mean,
those are the more mid-round guys.
yeah, but I mean, I think this thing has been trending anyway, just to kind of the position groups overall that we expect this team to draft: defensive line, running back, safety at this point, and obviously, we have to talk about the quarterbacks, because anytime you don't have a franchise quarterback, you need to think about where they might draft a quarterback in this thing. So I just, I mean, I understand why you keep pushing the idea of safety in the first round. And I'm not saying that's impossible, but I do think it's more due diligence that if the board breaks a certain way.
From just the pro day trail alone and the pre-draft process alone, what have the Steelers done to show they're taking a defensive lineman in the first round?
Just other than obvious need. And look, I mean, they would have been at the Michigan Pro Day,
But they weren't.
But Aaron Rodgers came in, but they would have been, and we still have to see who comes in yet. I mean, you still got several weeks to go until the draft, and then the fact that it would be that room's not great, you know.
Oh, I get it. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the depth chart, it's one of the most immediate needs. But I'm just saying,
Right.
strictly from a pro day, where have they gone? Who has come in for a visit or been reported to come in for a visit so far? It's a lot lighter than what I thought it would be. Could that change? Absolutely. And again, we'll see about Walter Nolan today. I imagine they're going to have good representation there, potentially Tomlin and Khan. But we're not seeing a whole lot right now on Derek Harmon, on Kenneth Grant. I guess maybe Alfred Collins at Texas, although he didn't work out at his pro day and reportedly did not have, I don't believe was part of the dinner with the Steelers, reportedly at least. That was Vernon Broughton, the other defensive lineman, the more later day 3 guy that joined whoever was there in Pittsburgh. So we're not seeing those names right now. Now, the guys they have looked at have been more later round guys, the guys they brought in for visits, like Yahya Black from Iowa, Josh Farmer from Florida State, a third round guy. Pegues from Ole Miss is probably a day 3 type of a guy. So the guys that have come in for visits have been more mid round selections.
Yeah, but here's what Tomlin and company would Khan and Tomlin would tell you: we like to go to pro days. It gives us the ability to see the most kids possible.
Well, Oregon had a ton of kids, and they didn't go to that one.
Well, when did they ever go out that far?
I know, but I mean, if they go to pro days where they want to see a bunch of prospects, Oregon is going to have as many draftable guys as any program in this year's draft.
Yeah, but then you got the track record of them just not going out that far generally.
Right. No, I understand that, but they didn't go to Michigan. I know Aaron Rodgers, but point is they didn't go to Michigan. They made that choice there. They could have tried to rearrange schedules and had Rodgers come in some other time, but
supposedly if you believe the report from Pelissero, Rodgers threw this thing together quickly and said he's coming in. So, what was the exact quote from Pelissero? He told Jim Rome that Aaron basically invited himself on a visit late last week. He was in the building for several hours, watched tape, blah, blah, blah. So it sounds like Aaron said, "Hey, I'm coming. I want to sit down and talk to you." And they had to rearrange their schedule.
Well, that's a whole nother conversation about the power play that Aaron Rodgers is already making here before even officially signing in Pittsburgh. So yeah, no, I understand all that for sure, but they could have gone to some of these workouts and so far haven't. And if we want to play the Blues Clues game, which you and I love as much as anything in the world, I'm just not seeing those connections right now, at least not as of March 28th.
All right. Well, I will be surprised once again if they go quarterback in the first round. Really, I'm going to be surprised they go anything other than defensive line, other than those two top guys in Harmon and Kenneth being off the board at 21, which I suppose is plausible.
Yeah, I don't want to rule it out, but those guys still have to come in for visits. It's still going to be the important thing to watch for, which you would expect, you would hope, you would think those guys will come in at some point, but it hasn't happened until it happens.
What's the official 30 up to now as far as count?
We are at 14. That includes the ones reported or stated by players, but not been officially announced by the team or by the beat guys. But we're at 14 of the 30, not
That's
including the local visits.
that's a lot to go still to build that list out.
Sure. And you hope that gets. We don't often get all the way to 30, although we have, I think, in the past, but we usually get pretty darn close. And so hopefully we get some more clarity because the visits really kind of stop. They'll pick back up really starting next week because the pro days trail off and teams are back at their home base and not on the road. And so really the first 2 weeks of April round out your pre-draft visitors.
You've been pushing the safety potential for round one pretty damn hard. So what percentage are you at right now where you think probability wise of this team drafting a safety in the first round?
Yeah, it's hard to put an exact number, especially as we
Over
get more
50%?
information. I wouldn't say over 50%, but I think a healthy third or so is probably where I'm at right now, which is, not odds on favorite, but not a small number either.
Okay.
And you talk about, okay, what would his role be in year one? How do you get that guy playing time? You don't want the guy just glued to the bench the entire rookie year, and you have established starters and roles from Minka Fitzpatrick and Deshaun Elliott. So would you play a lot more big nickel, which Pittsburgh likes to do, especially against those 12 personnel, 2 tight end heavy teams? Is there slot work potentially for any of those guys? But Makuba especially could potentially assume a slot role that's pretty open right now. So I think there are ways to not get that guy, obviously, 1,000 snaps his rookie year, but be top depth if injury does occur, and depth is still pretty thin overall, even after the Thornhill signing, but also find sub-package snaps and, just certain roles for that guy early in his career.
Sure. Yeah. Like I said, at the start of the conversation there that, you could easily get because of the depth chart and all, and because of the need schematically, you could get a top rookie safety on the field for 300, 400 snaps by the end of the season easily.
Right. Let's just kind of recap again where Pittsburgh has been at in terms of Tomlin and Khan for pro days this week. Texas, I know, is a little debatable, but they were at Ohio State, Notre Dame. We'll see about Ole Miss today. Other notable pro day sightings: Eddie Faulkner, running backs coach Eddie Faulkner. First time seeing him on the trail. He was out there out west in Boise for Ashton Genty's pro day, and Genty did not go through the testing, didn't run a 40, didn't do any of those drills, but did the on-field positional work. And Faulkner, we saw some clips of him being one of several coaches to put Genty through drills.
Yeah, and I think that's due diligence of one of the top guys is expected to go in the first round, and if he drops or other guys go off the board that you have eyes on, you have to be in a position where I think you got to be willing to take him there, and that's why you saw Eddie out there.
Is there any scenario? I mean, okay, I always ask those questions poorly. What are the odds that Genty could be there at 21? What would have to happen for him to make his way to Pittsburgh?
I mean, I think you'd obviously have to see maybe another quarterback or two go in the top, obviously 20 picks. And I think you'd probably need a surprise pick or two, someone that probably a lot of people are not maybe thinking go in the top 20 to go in there. I just, where I'm at right now, I'm expecting him to go off the board before 2021.
Same in a not super quarterback heavy class. It's really hard to see Genty fall. So this does, like you said, Dave, feel a little more due diligence. If something crazy happens where he begins to fall and, you think maybe you have a chance at him, it's worth working him out. Plus, I think it's just good to look at the top guys in the class to kind of get the baseline for what is the best of this class looks like as we evaluate the other guys, to be able to compare and contrast, to really get a good feel for, how to make that comparison, how to grade these guys. You want to look at what A plus, what that gold star prospect does look like, to really get a good feel for how to evaluate the class behind him. So there's just value in kind of seeing the best of the best up close and personal.
And look, as much as I would like to see this team and think this team will draft a defensive lineman, maybe one of two, in the first round at 21st overall, you can't sit there if you're the Steelers and just have only those two guys circled in case the board breaks a certain way, and maybe those guys go off the board or maybe you don't end up not liking one of those two as much as maybe you originally thought, and you've got to be prepared to take. Your list can't be two players. You got to build that out to at least 21 that you would take, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you want to have a wide net to cast because draft day can be unpredictable. What if a guy gets hurt? What if there's another Laramie Tunsil 2.0 draft day moment? You never know what could happen, and so you want to be thorough and have a good understanding of all the top talent in this year's draft.
Right. So, I mean, are you still at the highest percentage of thinking defensive line is going to be a defensive lineman is going to be the pick? Is that where you put the greatest percentage on?
Yes, that's still where my heart is at because, as you mentioned, it's just so obvious of a need. And if you don't address it in the first round, how do you address it adequately without a second round pick? And so that makes the most amount of sense in my heart. But then I do look at my brain and say, what is the evidence to show that based off the pro day trail? And I'm still coming up empty. But it's still hard to think that it's going to be completely ignored by Pittsburgh early on in this draft.
Do they think Daniel Ekulele is? Do they think more of him than maybe perhaps we do at this point? And look, this team is notorious, obviously, of going through free agency and putting small band-aids on potential draftable positions ahead of the draft. We see them do it time and time again, and it's you have to do that. But they on the flip side, they did not make a. I kind of thought they would make a bigger swing at a defensive lineman in free agency, at least a bigger name other than Ekulele. And especially on the heels of them releasing Larry Ogunjobi, because that really put the room thin. But all that said, I mean, I was a bit surprised to see the contract, to be honest with you, of Ekulele, and it's not monstrous by any means, but it totaled out at 2.8 million, and I really thought this might be a guy that a veteran benefit contract for him. $2.8 million on a 1-year deal, including a $1.63 million signing bonus, the only guaranteed amount in the 1-year deal, a regular base salary for his credited seasons of 1.17. And, is he still cuttable? Yes, but you generally don't throw $1.63 million in even as low as that is. Basically, what I'm trying to say is it feels like Daniel Ekulele, at least this far out, is penciled in to be on the 53-man roster. And I thought that the deal would be a little bit a lot cheaper, I guess you could say, overall than it actually was there. But I struggle to think that your top 3 or top 4 coming out of the draft will be Cam Hayward, Keanu Benton, Ekulele, and then a rookie,
Yeah, and I know you're not saying this, but the contract for Quali does not suggest first, starting.
Quali.
He's the guy.
I keep getting his name wrong.
No, we got some funky defensive lineman last names to talk about this year. So yeah, I mean, Quali's contract to me is that backup rotational end, base 3-4 starter to begin the season. If a rookie isn't ready, if there's an injury, he's the guy that can play competent run defense, and that's going to be his job. So it's a little like, what did Dean Lowry get last year? Like 2 years, $6 million. It's
Yeah.
basically it's a 1-year deal, but it's a Dean Lowry contract, which suggests you're going to make the roster. You'll be a backup, not a starter.
And even the Loudermilk contract was a little bit. I think that might end up being one of those 4-year qualifying contracts with him.
Okay.
What was it here with Loudermilk? I know he got the.
It was more than minimum, right?
Yeah, it was. It was a 1-year deal on him. 167. He got the maximum bonus of 167 500, but he got a base salary of $1.46 million. But I think that actually qualifies to be one of those 4-year veteran benefit contracts that they call them. And I think the last one that we saw was it Zach Gentry a couple of years ago, and that got one of those. It's one you only get like X amount of. I think you get potentially two of those types of deals, and those are guys that I think that have been with you for 4 previous seasons, and that you're able to pay them a little bit more base salary, but still the maximum of that signing bonus, but you still get the benefits of the decreased cap hit by signing those guys. So a little bit more than what I actually anticipated on him. So once again, they're kind of setting themselves up just in case that they miss out, I guess, on a an early round defensive lineman, that they're trying to plug some of those holes with Equale, say it multiple times, Equale, and Isaiah Loudermilk. But I am still in the camp of thinking that this team, assuming one of those two guys are on the board, in say Harmon and Kenneth Clark, Kenneth
Right.
Grant out of Michigan, or I guess suppose maybe even Walter Nolan could potentially be a guy in the first round there. I'll be surprised if they don't come out of the first round with one of those three guys.
We don't know the details on the contract of Otomewa, do we?
Yes, we do. That was
Oh, we do?
a minimum contract, no
Okay.
signing bonus.
And that
Base salary
tracks.
$1.03 million.
Okay, that's a guy that obviously very much no guarantees to make this team, but I think Aquale has a good chance to make it, and Loudermilk probably does too, and Dean Lowry likely being held on to here for training camp depth.
Right. And then also, you got a big off season for DeMar Leal as well too.
Right, and he's healthy and ready to go. So listen, I'm with you. It's a mistake if Pittsburgh does not really invest in D-line heavily. The trenches is where Pittsburgh has to build this team out of. Philosophically, it's good practice, and based on Pittsburgh's bad run defense last year, Cam Hayward's age, Cut Ogunjobi, like you don't have to obviously sell me on the need for defensive line, but it is curious to see them so far not show that interest in the pre-draft process and really have a lot of dots to connect when it comes to safety and even quarterback with Jackson Dart and with those maybe potential mid-round guys of a Will Howard or Jaylen Milroe, depending on if you think he's a first-round guy, third-round guy. He's kind of all over the map right now. So it's interesting. I really want to see this the rest of the visitors come in, obviously, finish out the pro days, but little more intrigue here than I thought there'd be.
All right. All right.
All right, Dave. Anything else from the Pro Day trail? Pittsburgh was well represented at Pitt's Pro Day, which is no surprise considering it is literally right there. No Tomlin Con, they were on the trail, but you had a bunch of Steelers coaches. Let me pull up the list here. You had assistant
Did we ever
GM.
did we ever see Omar Khan at Notre Dame yesterday?
I have not. Somebody told me he was there and they saw him on the Peacock Pro Day broadcast. And so we'll have to go back and look for him. But I have not personally seen him or even seen it reported from a boots on the ground person that Khan was there.
All right, and you had a nice 3-first shot off of the broadcast, I think, right, of Mike Tomlin, Terrell Austin, and I think Dan Colbert, right?
Right. Those were the three along with OC Arthur Smith. So Smith is there to, I guess, look at Riley Leonard, right? We were the other big offensive prospects at Notre Dame. This Mitchell Evans, the tight end. But you look at some of the top Notre Dame prospects, they're all defensive guys. And Benjamin Morrison, should we mention his name more often? Benjamin Morrison's name, potential top cornerback, has a hip injury. He did not work out, though, yesterday. And so there wasn't a whole lot for him to do. I think he's going to hopefully have a private workout sometime next month in April. So it's really the top guys at Notre Dame are those DBs and Benjamin Morrison and Xavier Watts.
All right, I'll spend most of the day trying to go back through the broadcast and see if I can pick up Omar Khan being there. I would imagine he probably was.
And I don't believe Riley Mills did anything at the pro day yesterday coming off that knee injury. Maybe I missed a report or something, but we talked about him a time or two and had his pro day yesterday, but I think that injury's unfortunately holding him back.
All right. He'd be a nice guy late or undrafted to add to this team, I think. I've said that, I think, multiple times.
Mm-hmm. And then for the Pitt Pro Day, just read off list names here reported out. Assistant GM Andy Weidel, Special Teams Coordinator Danny Smith, O-line Coach Pat Meyer, Tight Ends Coach Alfredo Roberts, Wide Receivers Coach Zach Azani, DBs Coach Gerald Alexander, and Scouting Coordinator Casey Weidel, that's Andy's brother. Not much to read into here with it being obviously right in Pittsburgh's territory. It's honestly just more interesting to know who was there, to know who was not at somewhere else, like at Texas. We know Azani was not at Texas, for example. So just want to, pass it along for you guys.
Where all have we seen Azani so far? Pitt
Let-
and Tennessee.
We have him at Tennessee, the Big 12 Pro Day, and Pitt, yes.
Okay.
Haven't seen Carl Dunbar once this year. What positional coaches have we not seen? Haven't seen Pat Meyer, excluding Pitt, which is a free space on the bingo card.
Right.
We've seen Tom Arth, quarterbacks coach at Alabama. It's the only place we know that he was at. Actually, I never even personally saw him at Alabama, but he was reported he was there, so I assume.
Okay.
Did you ever see personally Tom Arth at Alabama?
I don't believe I did.
I didn't either. Running backs coach Eddie Faulkner, only at Boise State.
Was he at Pitt too or no?
I'm excluding Pitt, but I
Okay.
don't think it was even. No, he was at Boise State. That was the same day as the Pitt Pro Day.
All right.
Yeah.
All
So receivers coach Zach Azani mentioned Tennessee, the Big 12 Pro Day. Tight ends coach Alfredo Roberts was at Miami, but I think that was mostly just because that's where he's from. He went to the U. I don't think that means they're going to go draft Elijah Arroyo in the third round. Pat Meyer, we have not seen anywhere besides Pitt, correct?
I don't believe we've seen him anywhere, at least spotted him, or reports on him. Did we agree that was midget at Florida yesterday?
Oh, that's a good point. I'm like 98% sure that he was there. I may want to double check that, but yeah, Anthony Midget, the assistant DB's coach, we believe was at Florida. They got a couple of prospects. Was that Jason Marshall Jr., I believe, but no big name guys.
And we haven't seen any of the linebacker coaches yet, have we?
No, I've not seen Scott McCurley anywhere, but that's not super surprising given the non-need really you have at, edge and off-ball linebacker. We've seen assistant O-line coach Isaac Williams. Like we've reported, I didn't see him personally, but he was at William and Mary for Charles Grant, which I have a hard time believing Charles Grant's going to become a Pittsburgh Steeler. I think he's going to be a early day 2, late round 1 kind of a guy. Dunbar we've seen nowhere, correct?
I don't think we have.
Right. And then Gerald Alexander is kind of the last name here we have seen at South Carolina and then also Pitt.
We need to try to probably find that Go Blue video on the Michigan site that shows the whole pro day to maybe see if Dunbar showed up at that.
Yeah, that's true. We need to probably do some more homework on some of these pro days that are still outstanding. I know somebody was even at Oklahoma, but I haven't confirmed who. I think it was just maybe Chris Watts, but there's still kind of some things to go back and try to double check.
All right. What else do we have on this Friday?
Let's just talk briefly about Russell Wilson's contract, and that's going to be important for Steeler fans because it'll play into the comp formula and what the potential draft pick Pittsburgh could get in 2026. The full incentives of his deal have been released by Sports Illustrated. It's a ton of incentives. I don't want to read off every single one, but a lot for playing time. You can get up to $1.5 million for playing 85% of the Giants' offensive snaps. A ton of performance-based ones. $500K for 20 touchdowns, completion percentage for 64% or greater will get him another $500K. He's got one for $250,000 at 30 plus touchdowns and a quarterback rating of 88 or better. Team success, at least $750,000 for making the playoffs, provided that Russ plays at least 55% of the snaps. $500K for each playoff win. $176,000 for each regular season win, assuming he plays at least half the snaps. And so, ton of incentives there. I think the short answer, Dave, is Russell Wilson will get Pittsburgh a 4th round comp pick. I think he'll hit some of these incentives. Some of them he won't. He's not going to max it out. He's not going to get none of these incentives. And so, my guess is he'll eventually and ultimately land Pittsburgh a 4th round pick.
And their win total, what did we say that was at like now? 4.5 or something like that. The betting. So if this team drafts, the key thing I guess will be to see do the Giants draft a quarterback, which you would think they will at some point. And if they obviously get off to a slow start of the season at the midway point and looking like they're not going to make the playoffs, then Russell Wilson's going to see his playing time cut.
Right. It's really about, will they draft Shedeur Sanders? Because they draft, somebody else later on, what are the odds that guy plays early and immediately, and even turning to him mid-season with Jameis Winston? I mean, if Wilson gets benched for Winston, then it's the same idea when Wilson's not playing. But I think Russ is going to get a long opportunity here to play for the Giants.
I think the most intriguing thing of all the incentives is seeing quarterback rating attached to a few of them.
Very archaic in this
Yeah.
analytical world, but he was at 95.8, I believe, last year in Pittsburgh. The benchmark for this contract is 96, and so he's right on that line.
But he gets $250K for, I guess the other things are related to total yardage and touchdowns and stuff along those lines, where it's a little bit lower on the quarterback rating.
Yeah, there's a lot of incentives where he only needs an 88 plus quarterback rating, but that's tied into touchdown passes and yards. Again, it's a lot of incentives, super complicated. It kind of shows why Pittsburgh does not like doing this stuff, because you get really into the weeds about what to project and predict.
Yeah, it'll be interesting once someone like Over the Cap goes through this and clarifies the likely to be earned and not likely to be earned. And the difference between those two is for likely to be earned, meaning he hit those types of numbers last season. If they're termed likely to be earned, they're counted against the cap this year. If they're not likely to be earned, then they're not counted against the cap this year. And if he winds up hitting them, then they would get debited against the team next year at this time.
So we really kind of know which ones are going to be likely and unlikely to be earned, right? I don't know what his playing time percentage was last year, but it wasn't 85%. And so that, I assume, would be not likely to be earned. In terms of the performance, his quarterback rating was below 96 last year, so that's not likely to be earned. His completion percentage was a tick below 64% last year, so that's not likely to be earned. He had over 20 touchdowns last year, so that's likely to be earned, et cetera, et cetera. So probably easy way to map all that out.
And then I guess the regular season wins, right? That he played more than 50% of the snaps in. Some of that will be each win that he had that he played more than 50% of the snaps. 176K will be termed likely to be earned.
Well, yeah, how does that work exactly? Because that's not like a benchmark. That's just for winning games. Has it even get factored into the cap?
You prorate it just like you would in per game roster bonuses.
So that counts against the cap in the current year, right?
Right.
Okay.
For whatever, how many games did Russell Wilson win? How many games did Russell Wilson win last year that he played more than 50% of the snaps? Which I would assume would be every game that he won, right? So if he had 6 wins last year times 176,000, seems like that's another 1.56 if it's as it's written by Albert Breer.
Okay, interesting. I didn't know how that worked. That makes a lot of sense. So, okay, good clarification there.
And they do the same with those with the per game roster bonuses. You'll see like can earn a max of, I don't know, let's say $500,000 in per game roster bonuses. But if the guy did not play a full 17 games, then that's prorated out of the games that he did play as likely to be earned, and then the rest would be not likely to be earned.
The more you know. There you go. So good information there. And speaking of which, Dave, let's talk about contract and salary cap. I already kind of ran through a couple of the contracts that have officially gotten all details on some of Pittsburgh's free agent signings, including defensive lineman Daniel Quale, but a couple more have come out on Mason Rudolph, the full details of his 2-year deal. Also, Juan Thornhill, his 1-year deal, and potentially some others I may not have mentioned there. So, Dave, kind of give us a recap and synopsis of these free agent contracts.
Yeah, we'll start with Mason Rudolph, and I think originally that was reported as a 2-year, $8 million contract. Well, it looks like it's 2 years, 7.5 million. I have not gotten with Joel Corey yet to see maybe if there's, I don't know, $500,000 in there and some sort of incentive for Mason Rudolph that maybe has not been released yet or known just yet. But uh $3 million signing bonus. I pretty much hit this one on the head. I said the cap number would probably be $3 million, and it is. I thought the second year cap number would be $5 million because I was going off the $8 million total, but it's $4.5 million. The signing bonus was exactly what I thought it would be here. So the only question with him is there another $500,000 maybe in incentives that we don't know? But the key number here would be that his cash for 2025 is exactly where I predicted it would be at 4.5 million, and his cap number is 3 million, which I predicted there. So that's the long and short of that one. The Juan Thornhill contract ended up being 1 year for 3 million. I think I said it would probably come in about that number, and the way they did that was a $1.17 million minimum base salary. They gave him a signing bonus on the 1 year deal, 1.83 million. That's the only portion that's guaranteed there. That produced obviously a cap number of 3 million, and obviously a cash total of 3 million as well. Who else? We went over the Aquale contract. We went over the Loudermilk contract. I believe that's a 4-year veteran benefit contract. His cap number is just 1.3375. Who else came in? Scotty Miller ended up being a veteran benefit contract of $1.17 million base salary. He got the max signing bonus of $167,500. You get a discounted cap charge of $1.1975 million on that. The Ben Skoranek one came in once we knew it was a 2-year deal. I predicted that would come in with a 1.8 million signing bonus, and that ended up coming to fruition, a cap hit of 1.71. Another interesting one. Let's see. They claimed Lacita Smith off waivers, so they inherited the minimum base salary of 1.3 million. Mayo was a minimum base salary, no signing bonus there. The James Pierre contract is an interesting one that came in at a base salary of 1.17 million, which is the minimum for credited season. He's got a $50,000 signing bonus and a $75,000 roster bonus. I would assume if he makes the 53-man roster of what that's attached to there. So potentially a $1.8 million cap charge on him. And I think that's all of them that we were awaiting the numbers on there. I think we got everybody in at this point.
So interesting on Pierre to structure it that way. Doesn't typically happen with a player in his position on a 1-year deal for a roster bonus like that, correct?
Yeah, I think we saw it with who was it a couple of years ago that had a small signing bonus. Oh, it was the tight end. The veteran tight end from Atlanta. Who
Pruitt?
who?
Michael
No,
Pruitt?
yeah, Michael Pruitt. He had a small signing bonus and a roster bonus attached to that.
Okay. All right. So he made the team. So similar situation there for Pierre, whose strength is on special teams as a gunner. And if you can get him to be a number 4, number 5 corner with some guys in front of him to play if there's injury, which hopefully Pittsburgh will have with Corey Trice, that presumed number 3, then that fits just fine.
Yeah. Once again, James Pierre, the only guaranteed amount is a signing bonus of $50,000.
What do you see Corey Trice's role being in 2025?
Corey Trice?
Yeah, Corey Trice.
Okay. Well, look, you obviously hope that he stays healthy, and I think you'd at least like to enter the season with him showing that he can be a reliable first guy off the bench, I think.
Is there a dime role? I think we'll be the starting dime player, assuming good health.
Well, in that one significant game, I think that he had the interception in. Wasn't that his role in that game?
I think, although that particular moment he was replacing, was it Dante Jackson that had gotten hurt? Somebody had left the game and he had come in for that cornerback spot. That was what he was doing on that particular play. But he had that dime role early in the season before getting hurt.
Let's see, what was his game logs last year where he played the most snaps of the 200 or whatever that he played?
I mean, the most was probably the Bengals game when she started. This is the second Bengals game.
Against the Jets, he played 35 defensive snaps. The game against later on in the season. Oh, I'm looking at Pierre. Sorry.
I was going to say, I don't think Trace was healthy for week 7 out of the hamstring.
I had James.
No, you're good. You're good.
Where is his per game last year? Him. Load up here. Yeah, he played 20 against Denver, second game of the season. And then later in the season, he played 49 against Baltimore, 47 against Kansas City, and 69. So 69 of his 193 regular season snaps came against the Bengals.
Yeah, and that was with some of the injuries that happened there with Dante Jackson as he battled the back issue, the shoulder issue, all that he had going on. So I think ideally if he can be that 60B, really replace KZ, a guy that can be a higher end cover guy. I think Trice is that perfect blend of a safety build. With a safety background, he played safety at Purdue initially, but also cornerback experience, moved to corner later in his Purdue career, has played corner in Pittsburgh, obviously, and you get a guy that has safety size with corner skills and comfortable in man-to-man. That's really ideal there. And so that's probably his initial role as well as being the top backup to Joey Porter Jr. and Darius Slay.
So let's see. He played 28 total defensive snaps in the first 3 games before he went down injured. And then obviously the bulk in the first 3 games and the final 3 games of the season. So definitely, and look, that's obviously where the big question is with him. And I think Omar Khan said as much here. You know, he's got to prove that he can stay on the field. Obviously came out of college with the injury concerns, missed his rookie season, all like that. You know, he's going to be asked, assuming he makes this roster, to play some on special teams, you would think as well.
Do you think he's next man up at outside corner, or would it be Brandon Echols?
I think he's going to have to earn it. I don't think he's going to be just given to him, but he's obviously got the size and the length that they like. And I would like to think that their hope is that he can have the better, have a healthy and strong camp to potentially be that next guy up outside.
I agree. And you bring in Echols because you know that Trice may not be healthy the entire season, so you need another real top backup. And Echols has the flexibility to play slot. I think he'll get some slot looks as well this summer. And so there's still a potential role for Echols to see some action, even if Trice is healthy and available, which we all hope he is.
Yeah, well, you got a couple of guys on the defensive side from that draft class that need to make strides and show they can stay healthy. I mean, DeMarvin Leal is one of them, right?
What defensive players are under the most pressure to succeed in 2025, Dave?
From where we sit right now, it feels like it might be Leal.
Of the entire defense?
Oh, I thought you meant of that.
No, I'm sorry. Of the entire Pittsburgh Steelers defense in 2025. There's a lot of candidates.
Yeah, there is. I mean, look, you want to see Minka get back to making notable plays. I think that's one. Keanu Benton got, even though he, his last season wasn't an awful season, need to see a more significant jump out of him this season. Patrick Queen, you need to see him take another step forward. Should be a lot more comfortable in that defense. I mean, really straight up the barrel on this thing, right?
It's true. Yeah. Down the middle.
Right up the middle in Benton, Queen, and Minka. I think those are guys that you need better seasons in 2025 than they had in 2024. Right up the gut.
If I made you pick one, I love to make you pick one, Dave, of those three. Which one is under the most pressure?
I mean, I think it's the highest paid one. It's got to be Minka.
I'll say Patrick Queen because he's not the highest paid, but he got a record contract from an outside free agent last year at the time of signing, and they really need a quarterback of that defense. They've not had that since Ryan Shazier. They need Queen to really be that guy.
Look, I mean, even if he stays on the field healthy and gets a lot of tackles and maybe a few passes defense, if Minka doesn't have a nice rebound, quasi Pro Bowl, well, I won't say Pro Bowl, All Pro, type season, you're really going to have to question what they might do with him for the final year of his contract.
Sure, that's totally fair. I guess just I think about it less in that sense, although that's an important way to frame it, but what is the most vital thing for the defense? And the defense still showed they could take the football away, even when Minka wasn't last year. Minka's still a good tackler, and there's still going to be value in that. He's not going to have a bad season. You need that anchor in the middle to really be strong against the run, be better in coverage, effective blitzer, communicate well, which was an issue down the stretch. That's why I lean towards Patrick Queen.
How many takeaways has this team lost this offseason?
It's a good question. Dante Jackson had the team lead with 5 interceptions last year, so that's off the top of my head. In terms of other defensive losses, there aren't a lot of other big losses. I mean, Ogunjobi's cut, but he didn't create really any splash plays. I don't know if he was directly involved in a takeaway last year.
Landon Roberts had a forced fumble.
Okay.
I don't remember if they got that one or not.
Well, that was the Dallas game, right?
Was it?
On the goal line, from the goal line leap.
Oh, okay.
Right. Roberts,
right.
The Dallas recovered.
Right. And they didn't get that one. Dante had 5 interceptions and 1 fumble recovery.
Right. So there's 6 takeaways.
Casey had an interception.
Right. Was that the Browns game? Different game. Denver game?
Which one was that? Week 2.
Denver game. Okay.
Who else? Have they
Cam
lost?
Sutton have any? I don't think Cam Sutton.
Nah. Did Preston Smith? Preston Smith had a fumble recovery.
Did he? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. There you go. So we're looking at just a little under 10 of the 30 odd something takeaways they had last year.
All right.
They're maintaining the bulk of that overall, but a lot of defensive snaps to replace for sure. From a snap count perspective, there's a big turnover there.
Okay. I mean, right up the gut is a short answer to your question there. I think of the guys that need to step up there. So, for sure. All right.
It's a good answer. Give us a quick cap update if you have one, Dave.
Yeah, quick cap update. With all these contracts in, I believe this to be as real time can be, which is a little bit rare for this time of season. If I can find where my post went on that. I have this team with the rule of 51 sitting at 34.43, almost 34.437 under the cap right now. That's a lot of salary cap space in the real time, which obviously you can afford a very expensive 1-year contract for a guy such as Aaron Rodgers at this point. It's important to remember that we still expect a TJ Watt contract extension later in the offseason, which should free up quite a bit of salary cap space moving on into later in the offseason as far as expected forthcoming cap charges. That number still hasn't changed, probably right around near 16 million when you account for practice squad, end of rule 51 for the 52nd and 53rd player, the draft class pool offset, which currently sits a little bit more than 2.6 million, and then the age old how much injury replacement fund extra room will they go into the season within cap space. I have that number still set at 6 million. You still have obviously two restructure candidates out there in Pat Fryermuth and Alex Highsmith, which will free you up a little more than 15 million. I does not feel like they're going to have to go down the route of restructuring either one of those contracts, but you can't say for sure. They're fine overall as far as cap space goes, and have been for obviously for quite a while here. The biggest thing that we're obviously waiting to hear is quarterback contract and how that fits into this. For those of you, and I know there are many that are concerned about the cash spending so far, I have this team in the top 51 totaling out of at almost 226 million in real time as far as cash spending goes, and that's almost 81% of the league's salary cap number. And once again, once we get a 1-year contract and a veteran quarterback or whoever another quarterback in here, we'll get a better sense of where this team is headed in cash spending. It is important to remember that this team will have roughly another $10.5 million in additional cash spending going on the books when it comes to the signing bonuses of their 2025 draft class and undrafted players. A Watt extension could eat up another $20 million or so in additional cash. Also, roughly another $7 million in cash will be spent to finalize the 53-man roster and practice squad and off-season workout bonuses. But on the flip side, the guys that are in the top 51 or top 53 right now as far as cash spending, could you see a guy like Cordell Patterson cut? Could you see some offsets maybe on guys outside of the 53, top 53 right now, end up replacing a couple of guys that are in the 53 right now with cash charges on top of it. So the big question as we sit here right now is, what will the quarterback salary wind up being for a guy such as maybe Aaron Rodgers? How much more additional cash above and beyond the 21 million that TJ Watt is scheduled to earn in 2025 as part of an extension will be spent on him? As soon as we find out what will or won't happen with Aaron Rodgers, or if they have to go another route, let's say a guy like Kirk Cousins or anybody really quarterback-wise in that room moving forward here, we'll have a lot better idea of what the rest of the offseason is going to pan out as far as cash spending goes. But as far as cap goes right now, like I said, almost $34.5 million in real time cap space right now, which is a lot of cap space.
Mm-hmm. And what's that, Dave? You want to say
Go
something
ahead.
else?
No, I
was gonna say, yeah. Just say thank you for keeping the books here and keeping track of everything, because you're the number one man for that job. And also probably a little cash advance for Chris Boswell would be a reasonable expectation of how his contract will be handled this year. Don't think we'll see that extension 2 years out, but I think a little modification to his contract is certainly deserving.
Look, and people probably not going to like me say it, but if I'm Chris Boswell, I don't kick a damn football for the team moving forward into OTAs. Oh, that reminds me, we got to talk about some long snappers, I think, here in a little bit. I don't think we talked about that the other day, or maybe we did. I don't know.
No, we didn't. We didn't.
If I'm Chris Boswell, I don't kick a football for this team until I get at least maybe another $3 million in cash pushed my way in 2025. And there's multiple ways that you can do it. You can bring some money forward from 2026 to get that done. You could just give them another, additional $3 million signing bonus and prorate that out over the final 2 years. But Chris Boswell has earned himself at least a cash value of $6 million, if not maybe even $7 million, to make sure that he is the highest cash earning kicker for the 2025 season.
Right, and certainly well deserved off the historic, and that's not hyperbole. It was a historic season for Chris Boswell, first Steeler to ever lead the NFL in points, and the numbers he put up, second to tied or the second most field goals, I think, by a kicker in a single season. You get the idea. It was an elite year for Chris Boswell.
Right, and he's currently scheduled, as far as cash goes, to earn, what did I say that number was with him? Hold on a minute here, I'll pull it up with him. Boswell is set to earn $3.12 million in cash in 2025. So you could very easily, and not, from a cap perspective and cash perspective, give him a raise this season, and I think he deserves it. And once again, if I'm him, I'm not kicking a football until I get that.
Understood and agreed. All right, Dave, let's talk about the long snappers you mentioned a moment ago. Pittsburgh brought in recently 3 long snappers for workouts: Peter Bowden, Matt Hembrow, and Sean Ratcher. Now, why is this happening? A little hard to say. I'm going to go ahead and assume potentially to sign for the roster, but I think it's probably more of getting a rookie minicamp list of guys together. And these aren't rookies, but guys who would qualify, I assume, and just trying to get some people worked out before that takes place.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Did they once OTAs got they only had the one on the roster for all last offseason, didn't they? Or did they sign another one last year?
I believe Christian Kuntz was the only official long snapper, yes.
Now, they will, as you state, need one for the rookie minicamp.
Right, and these guys have been getting workouts from several teams. The Jets were also working out long snappers, so this seems to be par for the course this time of year. Get some of these guys in for a quick workout to probably know who to invite for minicamp. Maybe not even on a contract, but just a tryout basis. You can even bring veterans in for rookie minicamp, select numbers. So probably one of these guys will show up in Pittsburgh come early May.
I would imagine so. And then the big question is, will they sign one to maybe alleviate some training camp snaps for Christian Kuntz?
I wonder who's the backup emergency snapper right now in Pittsburgh. I'm sure that biting question we're all asking ourselves right now. Trying to think who did it last year at all.
Was it?
I know Cole Holcomb has done it
Holcomb?
in the past. Yes, I mean he's done it he's done it in camp before, but with his injury and status a little uncertain. I'm trying to think if anybody else did it last year. I have to go back and check.
Don't remember.
Obviously, hope never to be in that situation, but you never know what could happen.
This team went a lot of off season with two long snappers in camp, but I don't think they did it last year.
Really haven't done it that often in the last couple of years. I think that's kind of become modernized, and is probably too strong of a word, but shifting focus to not take up a roster spot on a backup long snapper.
All right, and I think we got the team at 73 players under contract right now, and they can build this out to obviously 90. So if they're at 73, let's say they keep 6 draft picks, that would put you at 79. That would leave for 11 undrafted free agents. We would only be so lucky to have an undrafted class of 11 based on the last couple of off seasons, right? So there might be, you still got a quarterback probably coming that's going to eat up a roster spot. What else might this team add of lower end rostered players before the draft?
I'd like to see a veteran offensive tackle come in.
Yeah. Maybe another safety.
Sure, potentially. So reasonable to assume quarterback plus one other name that comes in before the draft, which leaves you with 9 undrafted free agents, which is about their class size, maybe a little bit larger than the last couple of years. But you go back to some of the past years, 5, 7 years ago, those classes would be around 10 to 12 names.
And then we normally see right after the draft, maybe a couple of these future guys cut, you know, to make room for maybe a couple of guys. Didn't they go into rookie mini camp or something like 2 down or something last year?
2 down?
Yeah, not
As
a
in
full 90. And then
yeah, I think you're right.
signed a couple coming out of that or something like that.
I believe you're right. Yeah, and also obviously post-draft comp ends, veterans get cut. We've seen this team sign players right after the draft. DeMonte Casey was an example. Who else got signed? It was somebody else, another DB that had gotten signed right after the draft, maybe 2, 3 years ago. So that's a possibility as well.
All right. We hit the long snappers. What else do we have to hit this morning?
Let's talk about special teams with kickoffs. The NFL proposing a bunch of rule changes, including one from Pittsburgh we mentioned it before, logistically, how teams can communicate with players during the legal tampering period. That's likely to pass, but not going to have a big material effect on what we see as fans and analysts. But NFL seems likely to tweak the kickoff rule to have touchbacks now come out to the 35-yard line instead of the 30. In most cases, there is a scenario in which touchbacks can go to the 20 based on, I think, if the ball lands in the landing zone and then goes in the end zone, isn't returned. I think that takes it to the 20. But in most cases, if this rule passes, touchbacks will be at the 35 to incentivize kick returns.
Cordell Patterson's not a fan of the new kickoff rule, is he?
He is not, and most people aren't a fan of Cordero Patterson, period, right now. I was going to ask you this question too, Dave. Gotten this a couple times. Some people have said, why is Patterson still here? Why not cut the guy?
Because it doesn't really cost you anything. It's not an albatross around your neck as far as cap space right now. And I think you want to get through the draft potentially and see maybe who you get there and some undrafted free agents. And then it would not be shocking right after the draft to see Cordell Patterson jettison. Or maybe you're also trying to maybe hold on to him for maybe any, I don't know, swap of a 7th and a 6th round draft pick or something like that to trade him away. So he's got very limited value right now to your team, but I think you just hold on to that until you get through the draft and undrafted free agent. I will be shocked if day one of training camp Cordell Patterson's still on this roster.
Day one of training camp. So you think he's not even going to get carried into Latrobe at all?
I don't.
Okay, that's fair. He's not going to make the 53 unless there's a bunch of injuries and a bunch of unforeseen things occur. But I'm with you. The reason why he's still here is because it's not costing you much to roster him. There's no big base salary. There is no roster or option bonus like there was with Larry Ogunjobi. So there really wasn't an incentive to cut him. I think you hold him in the spring at least, see how Gainwell looks in a Steelers uniform, get a lay of the land there. You see how the rookie, if you bring in a running back, which you likely will, performs, protect yourself against any injury. Somebody goes down in the spring. So that's the reason why Patterson is here.
Yeah, I don't want him out there. You know, if I'm happy with my running back room minus him, I don't want him out there potentially getting injured at his age at training camp. Did he miss time last year during training camp too?
Well, he started the year on the PUP list, right?
Yeah.
Or NFI, whatever list it was. I think he had a hamstring injury. He injured and weight wasn't great and all that stuff there happened. But yeah, to the point about kickoffs, so going to likely be more NFL returns this year. For Pittsburgh, they were dead last in kick return average in 2024, one of only 4 teams to have a worse average under the new dynamic kickoff rule. And frankly, the other teams have finished worst. One of them lost their top return guy. The other 2, I think, were like the number 1 and number 2 kick return teams the year before in 2023. So they're just kind of natural regression there. And so Pittsburgh really had no excuse to get worse, but they did get worse despite adding the most prolific kick returner in NFL history. Patterson had the worst average of any kick returner with at least double-digit returns last season. I know the injury may have played a factor. I don't think he even had a kick return until November, but Pittsburgh needs to improve their return unit on kicks.
Yeah, and they thought they were playing 3-dimensional chess coming out of the meetings last year and getting Patterson signed, right?
It looked like a big brain move at the time, didn't work out. So certainly not an area to overlook now that kick returns are going to be a thing and more of a thing in 2024. I had somebody ask, why is the NFL incentivizing returns when they want to protect players? The issue with the injuries on kickoffs was not about the number of returns. Inherently, it's not a dangerous play, but it was those car crashes of those players being 40 yards apart, running full speed and colliding. When you have the new kickoff model, the dynamic kickoff return, you have those guys 5 yards apart. It's like a run play. They're just normal blocking. And so they've really studied this well. Concussions were down last year, injuries were down. And so they've solved that part of the equation. Now you can focus on making the play exciting, more returns, which is good for the sport of football.
How about manifesting us another tackle on this roster, Alex?
You want a name or just in general?
In general.
I mean, yeah, I think they need
I'm
a veteran
surprised they haven't
tackle.
re-signed Calvin Anderson yet.
At least, like you said, the contract may be sitting out there for him. Yeah, I mean, yeah, heck, even the guy I talked about, Storm Norton, I didn't realize he re-signed with Atlanta, so he's even off the board right now. Do you bring in a Joseph Noteboom or a George Fant, some veteran guy that can play left tackle, right tackle? We talked about Jedrick Wills being probably the most talented tackle out there, but feels like Broderick Jones 2.0. Left tackle, athletic, first-round pick, hasn't lived up to expectations, just kind of had some weird questions about effort and mindset, and I would get the signing, but I don't know if it's really offering what Pittsburgh needs. And I'm like a veteran mentor too for young guys in Jones and Fautanu and even Dylan Cook.
Agreed.
Walter Nolan is only doing bench press and on-field work today at his Ole Miss Pro Day. He is not doing the 40, the drills, and so he will not have done them, I don't think, for the entire pre-draft process. Has Pittsburgh ever drafted a first-round pick who didn't do any sort of athletic testing in terms of 40 and vert and that type of stuff before
Oh,
they?
I don't know. I had to go back through the archive.
I shouldn't say ever, but when was the last time? Did Fautanu, did he do stuff last year? I mean, that's probably just some interesting threads to pull.
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, Fautanu worked out at the combine last year. Did Broderick Jones? I don't know. It's really probably pointless for me to really go through things name by name here live. Broderick Jones did as well. So whatever that's worth, Nolan not being a full participant at the pro day.
Is the Ole Miss Pro Day underway just yet? Or they? Looks like
It is.
Yeah, it looks like they've started. They're at least doing the bench and the vertical jump. Are they out on the field yet?
I don't think they are. I think they're getting close to that.
So we
But
should know soon whether or not Mike Tomlin and company's there.
yeah, Nolan did put up 27 reps on the bench press, a nice number for him, but that's all he's doing from a testing standpoint, but he will do the on-field drills.
I'm trying to cheat at the limited photos real quick that are up here to see if I see anybody, and I don't. They only got 3 photos up on the Ole Miss site right now.
All right, there you go. Anything else, Dave, here?
No, I think we got everything, Brother Alex. What did I say I was going to do today? I was going to go down the Notre Dame Pro Day rabbit hole, I think.
For Omar Khan to see if he was there or not. All right, Dave, let's get to some reader emails and close out today's show.
All right, let me sort this out real quick here. Let's start with Brett Nile wants to know about wide receiver question. As we look at the wide receiver room, do you think San Francisco regrets not trading Brandon Ayuk to the Steelers? He says, I also have a point. For many years, I've listened to the draft coverage and had rooting interest in what position they might draft, but this year that's over. He says, I no longer care. They just have to be right. They haven't got it right, at least in the first round since TJ Watt. It does you no good to draft a guy at a position of need and play him because you drafted him in the first round while he makes no impact. And 4 years from now, you end up having to replace him. So this year, I refuse to root to just to get a guy that makes an impact. Sort out the rest later, he says. So I guess, look, Alex and I have talked for quite a while now for a team that really prides itself in the draft, and specifically those first rounders that get them re-up to deals even after their rookie contracts expire. They have not done a great job of that at all as of late. So I definitely understand that, but in the same breath there, it generally always tends to be the axis of where need intersects best player available. But look, if a certain guy drops to you like a Nick Imaware there, where if you think this guy's going to be an insert player's name that's going to be an all pro during his early portion of his contract, a guy, the potential Hall of Fame, you cannot bypass those guys, regardless of position, even I suppose if it's an edge or whatnot there. I understand that, but nothing at this point is going to prevent me, unless things change, and they have before, I guess. We're thinking that this team's not going to draft a defensive lineman with their first round pick. I suppose it could be quarterback. If those two top defensive linemen are off the board, you can see them go to potential. Long story short, I get the talk here that they've got to be better at hitting with their first round picks, whatever position that player is.
100%. It's certainly a core issue of why this franchise has been stagnant, hasn't pushed forward, and they really not truly hit on a first-round pick since TJ Watt in 2017. Not even expecting every first-round pick to be Watt caliber, but in terms of like solid, great pick, may not be a Hall of Famer, but just a really, really good first-rounder, that has not happened since Watt in 2017. So that's it's a big problem for this team, no question. I think with defensive line, talked about that. But if there is a quarterback they love at 21, right or wrong, they love a guy, even knowing the need at D-line, quarterback is always your greatest need if you have it. And Pittsburgh obviously has it. And so if it's quarterback and D-line and they love a guy at each position, you have to go quarterback, right?
Oh, yeah. Obviously, if they're picking one in the first round, too, it's one that they are convinced could be the next guy. So why wouldn't you do that? And why would you fault them, even if you're listening to this and you don't like the one? At least there's the conviction there.
Sure. But the counter to that would be, are you convincing yourself you love this guy because you need a quarterback? Are you reaching for somebody? Only they would know that if they truly love this guy and truly believe he'll be the future. But that's seemingly what happened with Kenny Pickett.
Do you think this team, the 49ers, regret not now trading Brandon Ayuk to the Steelers? Hard to answer that, but.
Yeah, I'm not in the 49ers' head and don't really follow their every step, every way movement, but probably considering they gave Ayuk all this money, tears his ACL, looking to maybe trade him now. I think it's going to be hard to do. The bloated contracts, they had to get younger, they had to release some guys. This is not gone probably according to plan.
Mike Shorter writes in, Mike Shorter, rocket surgeon. All right. Is it possible that the team and Rodgers have verbally agreed to terms and a timeline to announce? Rodgers may just want part of an offseason without NFL rules. He says, I have to believe the team has a plan beyond Mason and would not let all other options walk. Great question. Here we are sitting a week out from Aaron Rodgers coming in, and I know Adam Schefter had a couple appearances either yesterday or day before saying he's not so sure Aaron Rodgers still wants to play, and hearing that he might not, and all that. And we talked at the top of the show, is Aaron Rodgers grandstanding this out until maybe a Pat McAfee show on whatever day that is, April 9th or whatever in Pittsburgh. I don't think you can rule that out right now. So, Mike, the best way I can answer your question is I don't know.
Whatever it's worth, Max Crosby, the Raiders star DN, just predicted that Rodgers will retire over the Steelers. I don't think he's basing this off of any inside source, but maybe a guy who's heard a thing or two. I don't know what NFL rules Rodgers would be skirting by waiting, unless you're saying about him not having to show up to OTAs, etc. But Rodgers needs to be at OTAs if he's going to sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I don't know what benefit there would be by him waiting.
Ben Hallam writes in from Cambridge, England, over on across the pond there. He says, I'm writing this on Thursday evening and hoping you haven't spent 2 hours talking about Rodgers signing. I don't think we've hit the 2-hour mark on Aaron Rodgers today, hopefully. He says, I'm not looking forward to that, but it seems inevitable. He says, given how many rookies sustained injuries this season, are we going to be getting a draft and a half of effective rookies next season. Secondly, when position groups in a draft are described as being deep, does that push the few good prospects from weaker groups to be drafted earlier than they should be? Conversely, do prospects that would be drafted highly in other years get pushed into later rounds because of the depth of the class? Oh, that's a deep question there. Let's start with how many rookies sustain injuries, and are we going to be getting a draft and a half of effective rookies next season? Obviously, hard to answer. I mean, you would like some of these, you know, let's see who Logan Lee, who else? Obviously Fautano went through what he went through. Who else missed
I
time
mean, the
last?
big two are Fartanu and Roman Wilson,
Right,
missing basically
Roman
their entire
Wilson.
rookie years.
It's just bad luck. I would like to think.
Yeah, they were freak injuries. I mean, Wilson turns his ankle on the first training camp, padded practice on a jet sweep, the only jet sweep they ran the entire year. Probably scrapped that after the injury, and Fautanu dislocates his kneecap in practice. Like, just what are the odds of that happening? So I think it's an accurate way to frame it. I'm going to bet you the team is going to say that about 75,000 times this offseason. We feel like we have two rookie classes with all the guys that were hurt last year coming back, and Fautanu, Roman Wilson, and potentially to other extents, Logan Lee, Ryan Watts. And so, yeah, hopefully that plays out and that'll be a benefit. But, how well these guys perform, a lot of unknown there. We'll have to wait and see. But it'll be framed that way, absolutely.
All right. When position groups let me read this real slow. When position groups in a draft are described as being deep, does that push the few good prospects from weaker groups to be drafted earlier than they should be? Conversely, do prospects that would be drafted highly in other years get pushed into later rounds because of the depth of the class? That's deep.
It is. They're great philosophical draft questions that really are answers with varying shades of gray and not black and white. I don't think players in weak classes get pushed up because of depth in other classes. They just get pushed up because they're the cream of the crop in a weak class. And if you want to get that top guy with a big fall off after, you want to get that guy early. A lot of this depends on positional value, what position you're talking about. Are you talking about running back versus cornerback, and the value between those positions in terms of how the NFL perceives them are different. Cornerbacks valued much more than, say, running backs. So I don't think there's a big correlation on that first part of the question.
And then as obviously goes on, you got to dive down into team by team and needs and what they're losing and all like, I will just say this. I think top to bottom, this isn't one of the better complete draft classes per se, top to bottom. And I think you'll see that bear out in the amount of guys that they invite to the actual draft.
Yeah, I think the NFL has been just more selective in general about who they invite. They're cutting down on the list overall because they don't want to have guys that get stuck in the green room for hours on end, or God forbid into day two, which has happened occasionally. And also lack of great quarterbacks this year is impacting that. When you had so many quarterbacks last year, you could just go invite all those guys and feel good about it. The second part of the question was about, can you read the second part about the draft question, Dave?
I'm trying to remember which one it
About
was.
depths, positions of strength was the idea.
Let's see. Conversely, do prospects that would be drafted highly in other years get pushed into later rounds because of the depth of the class?
Hey, that's it. What do you think about that, Dave?
Do prospects that would be drafted highly in other years get pushed into later rounds because of the depth of the class?
Yeah, just saying, do teams decide, well, the class is deep, so we're not going to take this guy at this position because we can get maybe some equivalent of him or him himself later on in the draft, and those guys just end up waiting.
Yeah, I guess if you want to look at defensive line per se, with that group, a guy being that position group so deep, can you get a guy maybe in the third round that maybe in other years would be a late first round guy,
Right. Or just, if we don't take this guy in the first round, there isn't a depth throughout the class to get that guy in the third round. I think there is some validity to that. Obviously, whenever you have depth, Some guys will naturally have to wait based on, as you said, Dave, earlier, team need and that kind of stuff. I don't know if it's as pronounced as some think because there's still a talent and a value aspect to how teams draft. And if there is depth and you have talented players, those guys aren't going to be largely drafted behind lesser talented players. And especially if you're talking about positions of kind of universal need. Everyone needs pass rush. Everyone needs offensive line help. And those guys don't sit around for too long. And so I do think classes of depth, yes, some guys will go later than they would maybe in a quote unquote normal talent pool year, but it's probably not as exaggerated as some people think of. Oh, you can just get that guy in the fourth round. Well, by that point, it's been picked over pretty good because teams aren't going to just let good talent sit.
Right. I mean, you're stacking your board based on the graded players, right?
Yeah, that's a good question about how teams stack boards. I probably want to do some more research on that. It may vary a bit team to team in terms of positional need versus talent and how teams, what their process is like. But essentially, yeah, it's graded by talent.
One more from Nick Arnold here. Thanks for putting out great information and props to your whole team. Thinking about our D-line situation, I had revisited Keanu Benton's combine measurements, and he seems to have great measurements for a defensive end role, 6'4", 309, 33 and 7/8 arms. But I remember the talk always being about keeping him inside at the 0, 1, 3 tech positions. Why has he not seen more outside work when he seems to be overwhelmed by double teams inside?
He played nose tackle at Wisconsin. They like having that athletic guy in the middle, like Javon Hargrave. And in pass rush situations, Benton has had some really good reps against centers. That club over is really effective. And I've talked about that move is kind of gets linemen catch onto it throughout the game. It becomes less effective and does not have a great counter off of it. But they're playing Benton where he played primarily in college. And it's kind of funny. I'm not saying it's wrong, but it is kind of funny to hear about. We've heard so much criticism for Pittsburgh playing guys out of position once they get drafted, moving them to where they didn't play primarily in college. And it seems like that's what people are hoping happens with Keanu Benton.
Right. I think, and it'll be interesting to see what a rookie, especially early pick, where that kid primarily played.
Should they move Benton out?
I think they should.
Okay, that's fair. I think there's value in moving him out to base end in 3-4 fronts and keeping his nose tackle role in nickel packages.
I lied. One last one coming in from LV here says, my favorite podcast. If Shadur Sanders falls to 21 or even close to that, would the Steelers try to get him? He says, I know Tyler Warren is it on our radar and we have defensive line to deal with, but let's say he falls and he's a great blocker and target and he is in our lap. Would we take him? I remember hearing that Tyler and Abdul were the most sure players in this draft. So I guess he's basically saying, if a guy like Tyler Warren was to fall or Shadur Sanders, would they go that route?
Would they? I don't know. I don't think it'll be Warren, even if he did fall. Sanders, I really just don't know. They're going to have to show some more interest in him, but
I tell you, Warren would be one of those guys that I kind of wonder, you don't have really the immediate need or per se, but I mean, is that too good of a player to pass up because he is expected to be a long time, high quality starter?
I understand that for sure, and you don't want to put blinders on and pass on really quality talent, and Warren certainly qualifies. But there was a practical matter of, okay, what does your offense look like? How does he and Pat Fryermuth and Darnell Washington all get on the field together when you have DK Metcalf and George Pickens?
Yeah, I understand that, but then we go back to like the one reader asked, you want to make sure they hit.
Sure. No, I definitely understand that. But for him to hit, he's going to have to be on the field and get the ball. And how do you do that? It just has to at least, not saying he can't, but it's got to be mapped out. It can't just be, let's draft him and figure it out. There's got to be a good plan in place before you turn that card in.
All right. All right, we'll end it there. Let's see. I think we're about hour 45 minutes or so, and we will be back on Monday, perhaps sooner if Aaron Rodgers decides what he wants to do. But in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter/X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button. Follow the directions that way. So until we meet again, everybody have a nice weekend. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.